I picked out the worst berm that I have to redo on my lot. This one's in bad shape. And I normally don't let them get this bad, but this one, we had some leveling done, and there's a big pile of dirt that sits next to this one, and then a native shrub decided to grow off the side of it, so that's got to go. It's in the way of the berm, so we're going to have to do a lot of work on this one, but I'm going to condense it as best as I can. The materials that I use are a metal rake. The 2 green stakes, I've got a 2-foot rope tied to it. It helps me measure out the circumference of the inside of the berm. And then I got a nozzle at the end of my hose. It's on the flat setting. I think there's some that have a fan setting. Either one will work, as long as you just don't soak your berm as you're building it to where it collapses the soil. I think the flat setting helps to kind of keep its shape. It helps to settle the water or the soil into shape pretty good without drenching it. So we're going to get started. You'll see me measure out my circumference, with my scientifically proven rope measure. So what I'm doing here is just basically softening the soil. Sometimes it gets pretty compacted. We're in Maricopa, so we got really sandy, loamy soil. But if it sits for a while, it gets pretty compacted, so you kind of got to work with it. So what I'll do here, this is a step that you don't need to do when you're building your berm, because it's already pretty level right off the bat. But in my case, this part of our property is a little bit sloped, so every time it gets watered, the soil likes to tend to lean onto one side, as it drains. And so over time I have to kind of go in there and just kind of re-level the bottom of it, so that the water, when it gets filled again, it's leveled out a little bit better. And this way the wall, not one side of the wall of the berm is holding on to too much water. And so everything's pretty uniform and pretty well balanced there. So you'll see me doing that 3 or 4 times just to make sure it gets pretty level. The reason why I keep measuring is because when I rake out the bottom, I'll lose my line. I don't want to lose that. That also helps me measure the outside walls, so I know exactly where I need to add soil to, or build the wall a little bit thicker in that area. The other thing that this helps too with leveling out the bottom is it also, I'll manicure this area pretty good, as well as around the root flare. I like to make sure the root flare's exposed, mostly because I don't like to suffocate my trees. It's overall healthy for the tree to be able to breathe, obviously. So I like to manicure that area, make sure it doesn't get covered over time too much by the soil that gets, compacted around that. I'll clear that up, get this nice and leveled out. And then the soil that I pull from this area, I'll actually pull it to the outside of the walls, and then that'll help me build the outside walls. So I actually reuse it to rebuild the walls on the outside. I should probably mention also the 2-foot circumference on these berms. These particular ones for my push pistache are at 2 feet circumference. I'll get the height and the width of the outside of the walls for you guys. I actually don't measure. I know exactly how tall and how wide to make them. But at 2 feet, with that height and width, I'll get that measurement for you guys when I post it. But that'll hold between 45 to 50 gallons. And it takes about 10 to 12 minutes to get 45 to 50 gallons in there. Right now it's winter time, so these trees are not getting watered like they normally do. Right now they're probably getting watered every 15 days, if that. Come springtime, summertime, they get that every week. So 45 gallons a week. And that's just for the push pistache trees. Obviously, you would adjust accordingly to whatever tree you have. But in this case, they're push pistache trees and they're younger trees, so they get a little spoiled when they're first in the ground. All right, so what I'm doing now is shaping the outside of the wall. The initial shaping, now this is where you would start if you were building a berm, is you got a bunch of piles of dirt around the circumference of your tree, right? So I take the back of my rake and I pull the dirt up to the height that I want it and to the width that I want it. So like I said, I'll get that height and width for you guys so you guys have kind of a gauge on how thick to build your walls. But I like the walls pretty thick, and the height is something that is you know, you want to take that into consideration because it depends on how much water you're going to fill these guys up with. So you want to make sure the water doesn't overflow. That's not fun. So working on the inside of it, and I like to collapse the inside to rebuild it as well. And what I'm doing here is I take my rake at a 45-degree angle. I hope you could see that in the video. It's kind of hard to get a good angle on how to videotape how to make one because, yeah, there's a lot going on. So my rake is at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going around the berm. I'll do that on the inside and the outside. I want the inside of the berm to be, the wall to be at an angle. Same thing on the outside. Somebody watched me do these one day, and it's like carving a cake, and it kind of is. I don't know if you've ever built sand castles, but you're creating that shape that you want it to be, wetting it down when you need to set it in place. And so this is the initial step that I do, is I get about the width and the height that I want it to be. The first, it's going to get a good soak on this one. And what I mean by soak is I'm not soaking it completely. I just want to wet the form so that it sets. So again, I want to go in with measuring out my circumference so I don't lose that line. It's really important for me to keep doing this because this is going to let me see how thick my walls are on the outside. I could see where I'm going to need to bring in some more dirt and add to that edge, or make it a little thinner on some, you know, just making everything pretty uniform. So I'll gather the soil around the entire berm. And this is the step that I think I had to go get my daughter for, so she can get a good zoom in on the way that I do this. Because the berm was pretty wet before, this is the best way I can describe it. So the soil is wet, and if you go and try and shape it with it being wet like that, you're just going to rub the dirt off of itself. So the shape isn't going to stay. You're just kind of, you're fighting it against it. So what I do is, with it being pretty wet from me setting that previous shape that I initially set in dirt from, you know, the outside of the berm that's drier, and I use that over the top of it to shape it. This way I'm not disturbing the previous layer that's wet underneath it. If it makes any sense, you'll see me draw up dirt. I'll throw it over the top and just lightly shape it with my hands. And no, I don't use gloves, and there hasn't been a pair of gloves that helps me make these berms where I can feel the wall and make sure that I know, okay, this is a little weak here, or this needs to be, you know, add a little dirt more here or there, whatever. There's just not a pair of gloves that helps me do that. I have to feel it. So again, just going around the inside of the berm. You can see that angle, it's a little bit out of 45. And then the outside flares out.
Let's try and get the side so that you can see how it's being smoothed out. Does that make sense?
We go all the way around. This is the initial shape.
If you probably go straight on
And this is where I just start to smooth out the roughness of it. The rocks, somebody asked about the rocks in the berm. There's a lot of rocks inside that berm. I actually don't take my time to take those out. I feel like it's going to help with the integrity of it. Like I said, we have sandy, loamy soil, so it helps. Once I push that dry dirt over the top, the rocks just kind of fall to the bottom when I start to smooth it out. At the very end of it, before I fill it with water, I'll take all the little rocks and pebbles out of it, and then I'll rake around the bottom part of the berm and get all the rocks out of there too.
Get on the inside with me. Basically where my hand is, I want that camera pointed, you know what I'm saying?
So just working around the entire berm. If there's a part that's a little bumpy or whatever, I'll take it and I'll smooth it. I'll pat it down a little bit. I'll press into it if I have to.
Alright, now we're going to keep going. Smooth that. And then all this gets filled in. Some dirt, smooth it out. So the collar there, breaks down. Everything just falls, it doesn't need to stay. That's the extra dirt. So, pretty sure this is a lot of camera turning for these people. Don't just keep it like on the straight, because then it's less editing for me. I have to turn the camera. Okay, so you can see I'm clearing out the dirt that fell in here.
So this is where I'm taking out all the, you know, little pebbles and rocks and extra dirt that fell in the middle of it when I was building the inside and outside of the walls. Again, initial, the shape of it is about 90% there. I'll probably do where I'll re-wet it and then just go around and shape it with the dry dirt. I'll probably do that a couple times. I just like to make them well. You don't have to, if you know, you could be done here, but in my case, I'm very picky. I like these things to last. I don't, you know, if my dog or somebody accidentally runs into it, it's not going to completely collapse the whole thing. So I like to really build them well. So I'll build up the wall really well by soaking it and then adding another layer. Soaking it again, adding another layer. I'll probably do that 3 times max. If I feel like the wall is pretty solid, then you know, a couple times should be good. Let's get another pretty good soak. Again, it's always on a fan setting or flat setting, depending on what your nozzle set. Now this is the final, one of the final steps is I'll go around the rake, or I'll go around the berm. I'll get rid of all the rocks that fell down to the bottom, because this last layer I want it to be cleaner. I don't want a bunch of rocks getting in my way, so I'll get those rocks out of the way, and then I'll go around the whole thing. This is what I mentioned earlier, is I'm very picky. I want to make sure that the walls are solid. If it feels like it's a little bit too hollow or soft in one spot, I'll press into it, make sure that that's not going to lose integrity over time. And some of these berms, I've got some berms that hold 75 gallons, so I'm gonna make sure that wall is pretty solid, and you can do that by feeling it. And so again, I can't feel that if I have gloves on, so I have to do it bare hands.
Oh, wonderful. That took a long time. Set it over there, please. This is pretty dry. That's the second layer. How many layers do you do?
So the majority of the time a berm will take me to build one probably about the same time it takes me to redo one, because of how picky I am with the shape and making sure that everything is even. I would say about 4 hours is what it'll take me. This one took me a little longer. It's more like 5 hours, because I had to go around and manicure the rest of the ground around it and get that bush that decided to grow off the side of it. I had to get that out of there. But this guy's done. It's very rewarding when it is all done, and it's hard not to stare at it for a while, honestly. So what I do now is, while it's filling, I'm gonna manicure the rest of the ground around it. Also, I take advantage of this time because I took that top layer of soil out. It has a lot of micronutrients in it. It's got, good fertilizer that I put throughout the year in there. I like to really spoil my trees, but I took that out, and so I like to add some micronutrients into it, just to kind of replace that. And then I'll let this water drain through, and then I'll mulch my trees, so they'll get a pretty good dose of that. But for the most part, this berm is pretty much done. And we've got, golly, I think I've done 5 of them. This is my 5th one, so I've got 15 more to go. And it's, like I said, it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. In my opinion, it's the best way to water trees. You're not losing a lot of water. It goes straight to the tree where it needs to go. So appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know.